All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. For those that I don't have the privilege of knowing, my name is Zach Posner. I'm a co-founder and managing partner at the LegalTech Fund. I am honored today to have my friend of over 10 years, Mark Dorman, joining us. Mark is the CEO at Elite. He has a fascinating career that is, he's bounced in and out of legal, including in other verticals where we crossed paths originally. He's got a unique perspective, basically, on this vertical because he's had the opportunity to see in others and kind of the role that he sits in heading up Elite, which is absolutely a leader in the financial management and kind of business operation side as to how law firms run and all of that fun stuff. But before I continue to butcher it, maybe I should turn back to you, Mark, and say, well, first off, thank you for being here. And second, maybe a little context on Elite, its shape, its size, its scale, et cetera.
So thank you, Zach, and thank you to everyone listening into our conversation. We'll try not to go back too far for our reminiscing of when we met. But yes, I'm lucky enough to be CEO of Elite. Look, we're as you said very eloquently, I think the term of art within the legal industry, legal practice management, but really for Elite, we are, focused on finance and business operations, really the ERP for a law firm. And so we're about 500 people globally. We operate globally. We serve, everyone from, a 50 lawyer firm all the way up to the largest law firms in the world. But we tend to skew to the enterprise end in terms of who we serve. About 70% of the global 100 law firms use our software. About 65% of the AmLaw 200 use our software. So we're, very much a leader in that space, and we're very excited to be at the heart of our successful law firms, helping accelerate their business.
And maybe not to rewind too far back, but we had crossed paths and worked together in a different vertical in education. I think and maybe a little bit of your career, like I know because you were doing legal before that, then a little bit of education, and I'd love to bridge that to as you come back into the vertical, you've been in back about a year, but like what's different, what's changing?
Yeah. So I've been around a while, Zach. Thank you for pointing out how old I am. So those of us of a certain vintage, I'm of that vintage, have a .com in us. And my .com back in the late 90s was helping serve, law firms with downloadable free legal forms online. So crazy business. So it was acquired by what was then Butterworths and now LexisNexis. So I spent a bit of time there in the early 2000s. And then I spent a little bit of time at Gartner in the US, which got me to the US. Despite my butchered, somewhat transatlantic accent that I have now, I've been there ever since. I've been here in the US ever since. And then it was 8 years at Wolters Kluwer. I was a CEO of their legal and regulatory business in the US. So I spent a bit of time in legal, kind of going through that, if you think that first wave of technology coming in and really disrupting and digitizing what was a very analog content-driven business. And as I think about coming in right now into, we are pure software, we're a platform software business at Elite. I think one of the interesting things coming in, a little over 18 months ago now, to be CEO of Elite, is this burgeoning legal technology vertical that is pure software distinct from content. And I think that's probably one of the big changes that, historically, when it was called legal technology back in the late 90s, early 2000s, other than very specific point applications, maybe e-discovery being an example, this software and legal technology was very connected with content. Now, as we forward where we are, it's a discrete vertical like many other technology verticals that about the software and technology enabling law firms to do things better.
A couple of things going through my mind as you're responding there. Do you think that well, first off, the construct of LLMs and AI and all this stuff we're seeing,
yep.
it seems like that bifurcation of the world, almost if I extrapolate higher and say, well, the business of law versus the practice of law. Um, you know, do you think this wave of technology has the capacity to more positively impact, or let's just focus on the business side because that's where you spend your time. Do you see this tech being used right? Like the impact that this wave of technology has, like, do you think it's going to be big? Do you think it's going to be real? And do you think and what's the time frame look like in your eyes for this?
Yeah, look, I think things are, it's the old Bill Gates quote, right? Things never go as fast as you'd like when you look forward, but when you look backwards, it goes much faster, or you got much further than you thought. And I think we're probably in that moment, moving much faster than we think we are. I know for us in technology, we think we're not actually moving as fast as we could be, or the industry isn't, but it's actually moving pretty rapidly. Look, I think it's not just LLMs and technology as a secular trend or change. That's certainly part of it. But you've got two things happening at the same time as well that I think are equally important. So one is demographic changes. And so if you think of the leaders within legal technology and the leaders within the law firm, people born before the internet, after the internet, before mobile, after mobile, before social, after social, and kind of those generations coming into leadership positions, but those coming into, the business overall, their expectations of how they interact and use technology to enable them overall in other aspects of their life to be successful is driving a lot of the change in how they can apply technology. And I think the other thing, if I think of it in a legal market more broadly, it's, we're in a much more complicated, complex global world, and law firms' clients are driving them to give them different types of solutions. And what that means is they're becoming more complex organizations. And one way to better enable them is going to be, how do I use technology to solve some of my problems, whether it's in client-facing applications or indeed in business operations to help the firm run more effectively. So I think it's those three trends together, and technology is certainly an important driver of that as that moves forward. And glad that we got 2 minutes into this before you mentioned AI. So that's well done.
Well, the Bill Gates quote. I've never heard a quote that has so many different. Everybody has like their own little version of it that they've heard. I've heard people overestimate 2 years, underestimate 10, and then I've seen that as 1 year and 10 and 1 year and 5. So like everybody's got a different version of it. But the fun part from my end and why I'm bringing this up is, we're sitting here, basically in December of 2024, and ChatGPT, the big demo event moment, was November 30th, 22. So we're like exactly at that barrier where people are overestimating that 2 years, underestimating that 10. And I think it's going to get interesting. But I also agree with what you're saying. And it's also like a mind shift. It's how people are used to, how people are consuming their media, how they're interacting with people, and they expect that to extend into the office these days.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit more specific on like what the core use case for Elite is today, and where you see that, going in the next couple of years. Like, where are the logical places for that to expand? How do you you talked about some of these numbers earlier and the market share that you have, like, you did something right. So but where does this go? How do you take advantage of all of this, especially somebody coming in, you've been here for about a year, but you're excited as to where this is going to go.
Yeah.
How do you think about it?
So look, standing on the shoulders of giants, we've been around a while at Elite. So founded in 1947. So we've been around a while.
Yeah.
But we started building software in earnest in the late 80s, 90s, through the 2000s. And, as I think about what our core value proposition is really around automating financial management and business operations for law firms. So helping them become more efficient, more effective, more profitable. Reducing risk, increasing compliance is really important for a law firm. If you think of their value, one of their core value propositions to their customers or their clients, and then also being able to get them access to the right data at the right time to help them make informed decisions about their business. And so, one of the changes, and that's why those demographic shifts are kind of important, is the new generation of leaders at law firms want to make much more data-informed decisions, and so they need tools to be able to do that. And so at Elite, we're very much focused on what is the best technology and how do you apply that to enable those things to happen. And where we're going, and it's happened pretty rapidly, is how do we move to traditional shrink-wrapped on-prem software to much more of SaaS-enabled, cloud-native solutions that give you access to different types of technologies, different modes of operating, and still deliver across those three core components. Increase efficiency, profitability, increase security and reduction of risk, and getting access to data. And so we see that move to the cloud as the foundational step to enable a much more services-oriented delivery of technology, which we think has huge benefits. So it's not just that you have a solution living in a different location, so it's not in your data center somewhere, whether that's real or virtual, but it's actually a mode of operation that changes how you deploy technology, how you consume it, and what you can do with modern technology. And we're very excited to work with all of our customers to think through how we can really support them in making their businesses more effective.
I'm going to throw you on the spot here, but is there like a stat that you've found that you're like blown away by, that or like something that you think you're going to help with, whether is there something that resonates through your mind that like, we're going to go fix this? Have you come across those types of challenges yet that you say this is archaic or this is crazy?
So I'm not sure it's archaic. It's kind of the mode of operating for a professional services firm, and particularly a law firm, is their management of cash and management of time. So time is the kind of economic unit of value for a law firm, but how do they turn that into cash? And if you look at the processes that are involved right now, they're pretty complex, and there's lots of point solutions that aren't quite connected up. And we think that with actually this move towards services orientation of delivery of technology, we can connect the workflow. So it's not about let's take your solution and make it a little bit better. It's let's get you to a place where you're running your business where we can see the workflow and actually go solve that to make sure you can get paid faster. You actually realize, so kind of interesting that, less than 90% of the work that's invoiced is actually collected by a law firm. Kind of interesting. Yeah. So here's work that everyone agrees we did and was paid for that they couldn't collect for one reason or another, whether it's a dispute or a write-off or a write-down or something. Let's understand what that is and help you get paid the full amount. Let's get you paid faster. And actually, let's reduce the level of risk in the process to be able to do that. And so we think there's a big efficiency component around giving time back to fee earners. And when you give time back to fee earners, that turns into billable time for them to create more revenue for the firm. And at the back end of the process, in terms of how we turn that time into economic value and ultimately cash to the capital account, how do we do that in the most efficient way possible? So we're we've got a lot of things to do to really help firms, A, have visibility on what problems they need to solve to get there, and B, help them get there as well.
Yeah, first, it is the only profession I've ever seen where you have the most senior leaders of multi-billion-dollar companies that are literally working between Christmas and New Year's, working on collections for those last couple of days. And we actually outlined something that I'll share with you, and we call it rates to cash. Literally every step that goes from rate setting to cash. And to your point, and we were doing it to do a market map, and it's just amazing how many solutions lie in between those things. And if I was an end customer, it'd be very challenging to stitch these things together or to use them properly.
So I think that's exactly right. So if you think about it, you've got owner operators of multi-billion-dollar businesses that are heavily involved in the billing, invoicing, and collection process.
Yeah.
And to the extent to which you think that's not what you get paid to do, how can we help relieve that stress, right? And there is a way of doing it. And I think with the multiple stages, with multiple point solutions, the value of thinking about workflow and automating a workflow is very different than let's just have a point technology solution. And I think that's the big value driver that we'll have moving forward.
Are there big challenges between getting to here and there, or is it more just time, the right teams in place, helping build the product out? Maybe it's M&A for you guys. Like, I'm just curious how you think about that.
Well, as you know, Zach, the technology is normally the least problematic part. Right?
Yeah.
It's largely around change management in terms of first of all is, a little bit of self-diagnosis, and the first step in solving this problem is admitting that you have one, and so that's kind of understanding that let's focus on where the problem areas are in that process. If you think of that rates to cash, so all of the steps in between, how do we think about where the problem areas are that we need to go and resolve? The second thing is, well, how do you go and resolve that? And for us, the first step on the journey to really tackle some of the core areas is how do we get people to our cloud solution? Because then we can really begin to tackle the workflows in a different way. The more you're not focused on the technology aspect, you're actually solving problems with technology, which is a bit of a mindset shift that we need to have. And that's where that change management component comes in. And then there's going to be a little bit around, how do you actually deploy change within the way in which a firm operates? And that's the biggest part. So, we look towards partnering with our law firm customers to help them think about what are the problems we got to solve today and what problems can we solve in an iterative way over time. And that's kind of, the way in which we operate. But change management is the biggest part about thinking about each of those processes, breaking them into workflows, and how do we work together to solve that.
And do you just look at it and say, wow, we have so much that we can be so helpful if we can, get some of these next sets of pieces in line?
No, we do. And so if I think of Elite, we have a lot of the core components. We tend to be the single source of certainly the economic truth within a law firm because we cover it right from the entry of the work, so time entry, managing a time card, all the way through to collections and the cash coming in. So you see it, and ultimately we report on it in the GL. So kind of we have that core component, and we can manage that workflow, but we don't do it alone, right? We live in a legal technology ecosystem, and we have a pretty open system where we can have other parties where they have specialist solutions integrate in through our APIs. And that's important because we are the single source of truth. Every other major system has to come in or out of our system at some point across that workflow, whether that's your CRM, whether that's your DMS, whatever it might be, has to come in and go out. And so we got to construct that and work as a kind of group to think through how do we solve the core problems. And in particularly, if I think about the office of the CFO within a law firm, that's the core stakeholder that has to think through the economics and how do we solve that problem of getting the economic value of the firm up and running.
Well, look, that single source of truth, that's the best place to be sitting in the stack. So really excited to see kind of what direction you guys go. We're certainly seeing a lot of early stage companies that may end up under your purview one day. And I think that, that there's a lot in that construct from rates to cash.
Yep.
Maybe just a couple closing questions for you that kind of zoom out a little bit. Is there kind of, I know your kids are of age as they're thinking about entering the workforce. Is there advice you have for them, or how are you thinking about the next generation of talent on both sides, I guess?
So look, I think it's about, try and find something you like doing, and then you're not working that hard. That's kind of one thing you try and aspire for your children to do, is to try and find their passion and what they care about, and do that. I think the other thing is figure out what you're really good at so you can add value, right? It's really tough when you're doing, and so there's a little bit of self-reflection on where can I actually add value and solve problems versus actually be a problem as I'm going into the workplace. So I think there's Arnold Schwarzenegger's got his book called Be Useful or Make Yourself Useful. I think that's not bad life advice for all of us.
Which I don't know if you've read. His journey has been spectacular.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just, if you look at the different phases of his life, from
quite remarkable, from rural Austria to where he is now. It's quite
it's kind of amazing. All that being said, we're a little bit over time. I can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing a little bit about your work. We're excited to track it, work with you in the future, and I think what you guys are doing is really important to the entire ecosystem. And I know you're thinking about APIs and marketplaces and how you can work with earlier stage companies. And we got lots to send your way.
Well, we look forward to it. As I said, it takes a village within our law firm. So we're happy to be part of that and facilitate it. And thank you very much, Zach, for let me come on and chat.
All right. Thanks, Mark, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.